In this video, we're going to talk about import data from a file in the zip. So these are the zip files that we have downloaded. So in this zip file, there are 11 txt files. So the job of this macro is to read the contents from each of this txt file and put that into SAS dataset. So the first thing is that we should find a way to unzip or extract the files from the zip file. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, so back to the program. So this is the diagram. So step by step, the first step is to initialize the variables, which is this part. The second is that we should define the names of the zip here, which is this part, the zip name, the inside, what is the file name, whatever. Oh, by the way, so this macro is actually for a specific txt file in the zip. So all of this has been defined in the previous macros. If you you can go back to the original, to the previous macros to recap that. But anyway, so here the first is that we're gonna determine the zip names, the source txt file name, and to treat the special cases, like for the inactive file, there will be a different setting for that. The next is that we need to assign a nickname for the source zip file. So the following part is to do the trick to extract a file from the zip. So the first thing is that we're going to set the nickname for that zip file. The next is to as I specified here, is to copy the source file from the zip to a temp file. So it is like we're going to copy, for example, this vet.txt into a temporary file. So this is how it is achieved in SAS. The first is that, again, we're going to have a nickname of a temp file, which is called the .txt. And that file will be put in the work directory so that it is a temporary file. Once you close the SAS or SAS.eg, it's going to be automatically deleted. Yeah, this part is really quite awkward. All right. So we're going to have a temporary file, which is called ImportDataTemp.txt. And that file will be put in the work directory. And then we're going to have a nickname for that temporary file. Yeah, so this is really quite complicated. All right. So the next part is about to read and write. So the source file to read from is in the zip. The zip is the nickname, right? It refers to the zip file, for example, this zip file. In the local folder. So we're going to read the zip file, but we're not going to read all the zip file, but a txt file in that zip, which is, for example, the vet.txt in that zip file. So this is the way to express that, to say that we are going to read from this zip in the nickname. It's not a physical file name, but the zip name, the nickname. And inside we want to read data from the source file, which is this file name, for example. All right. So this is the reading part, reading from the zip file. And then we're going to write that into the previously assigned the temporary file, which is having the nickname of the txt. So this is the target file to read to write to. All right. So So what does that this part tells us? So basically, it tells us that when you assign a nickname for a zip file with the specification of zip, then SAS is going to know that, okay, so that is a zip file. So it is going to turn that zip file into a collection of files within that zip. All right. So once you want to have, so with that, if you want to have an individual file from the zip, you just say the zip, which is the nickname and the file name inside with the extension name, for example, the txt. So that part is to get a file within a zip. Right. So the writing part is to write that into a temporary file in a work directory. So you might ask me that does that work if I write to a permanent folder instead of the work directory? I don't know. You can test that. Maybe it works. Right. So the idea here is that because I don't need this text file, I just need a temporary file so that I can read the data from. So that's why I put it in the work directory. All right, so these two lines is to define the file to read from and the file to write to. The next two lines are really to read and write. It's really quite twisted, yeah. So this input is to actually, to this step, it is going to read the contents from the sim file. All right, so this input, this statement is to read all the contents from the source file, which is a txt file in a zip with the nickname of this. So where does SAS put the contents? Well, all the inputted contents are put in this variable called underscore infile underscore. All right, this is really it's funny. Well, anyway, so all the contents are in this variable called infiles, and then we're going to use this put input put. I can't hardly say that name, but put the contents in that variable into the target file, which is with this nickname of .txt. All right, so this part is that we're going to define the source file, we're going to define the target file, we're going to read from the source file into this variable, and then we're going to write the contents of that variable into the target file. So after this step, the contents will be written into this txt file in the work directory. Okay, now go back to the diagram. So where are we? So after this step, we've copied the source file, the contents of the source file from a zip to a temp file in work directory. All right. So the next step is that we're going to determine how we're going to input that. So the contents are there, and we're going to determine how to input the term, input the contents. Remember that earlier we've defined the input terms. So back to this step. Make all the terms here. And in that step, we've created a file called input terms. This is for each individual file. This is the input terms. So these are the terms that are going to be used here. Going to be used here in this step. So here's the code. The code is to say that, well, so we're going to read from that input terms file, and we're going to find a row with the same file name, for example, vet, right? So then we're going to output the contents of that input term and also the variable types into a macro string, and save that into a macro variable. Oh, here we go. So actually this import format is also going to be used. So if that, in this file, if it is a status, and in this column, there are contents, then I have to specify that we're going to add this format string. So this is how it says here, that we're going to have the import term, we are going to have the import variable type, and also in case that a format instruction is specified, then we're going to add the input format. So this is here to determine the input terms. So now we're going to input the contents. So the contents are in that txt file in the work directory, which is a temporary txt file, right? So we're going to input what? And we're going to specify the input terms here. For example, we're going to input a var with the property, with the proper type. So for example, if the source file is vet, then we're going to have the import term like this. So we're going to import the direct code of a numeric type of the length of 8 until unless you have a space is met. And then the second is the vet species and with the length of 50, whatever. So this will be the input term to be put here. All right. So the next is that is going to check if that input format has any values. So like in the case of the status file, let's just scroll to that. Well, that way it says, yes, you have to format that. You have to format the dates, like the history date as the date 9 format, expiry date as the date 9 format. But it depends. If, like for the vet file, because there is no input format, we don't have to put a statement there, right? So that way it is going to, with a specified input term and a specified instruction for format, is going to input the data from the temporary file and put that into the target file. So there is an exception, is that if a row in the text file is not with a direct code, we cannot read a direct code, then we're gonna put that into the misdirect code file. So this is for quality control. Okay, so one thing is very important here is that we have to put all these variables into a null value. So this is basically reinitialize these values. So otherwise, it might mess up, because if a file is not read, it's going to inherit the previous input terms, or the formats is going to cause error. So to note, because I have to, it has been a while, so it seems to me that I didn't use this input var type. I don't know. Sounds like I didn't use that. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. So for sure that this input term and the format are useful in this macro. So what is the DSD and misover does? So that thing is going to be, so I'm not going to talk about that. So probably you can search for the SAS document to understand to understand how they work out, let's talk about that. So the DSD is that, well, you have a note here. So basically it says that, well, the DSD is going to treat the connecting delimiters as 1. So like you have 2 space, or if the delimiter is space and a comma. So if you have a space and comma together, that will be treated as 1 delimiter. So this is the first. The second is that if your original data contains quotes, it's going to remove these quotes. So that's what DSD does. And a miss over is, well, if the miss over is that if it reaches the end of the line in the TXT file, so it is going to stop there and start a new record in the target data set, regardless of whether or not all the values are input in the current record. Well, just to illustrate the idea, so for example, you want to have the target data set, you want to have 3 values, each for a column or variable. So in the text file, you have this line. So you're going to read this value 1 into column 1, value 2 into column 2. And then you have a problem because for value 3, for column 3, you don't have a value here. All right. So in that case, it's called a miss. So if it is a miss, then it's over. So you're going to put that record 1 is like this. So this will be the record 1 is like this. So then you're going to, so if the third value is missed, then it's over. So then let's move to the next record and start with the new line to read. So this value is going to go to column 1 again, column 2, and column 3, right? So this one is missed and it's over, and that's called a miss over. All right, so basically that's what I have for this video. Actually, it's for this import a data file. So basically, after this file, after this macro, it is going to read contents from, for example, for example, this TXT file is going to read line by line